Wow, that was a longer break than our other ones, but I know that we've been going on for a while. So let's jump right into our fireside chat with our next speaker, Erica Lockheimer.
Erica Lockheimer has been at LinkedIn since 2010, where she has been the Senior Director of Engineering, heading the growth engineering team for over 4 years. She started the growth team from ground up to now a high-performing 120-person team. In 2018, she moved on to her next play at LinkedIn and is now VP of Engineering for the LinkedIn Learning team and Glint, and now just recently the VP of Engineering for Talent Solutions, our LinkedIn's recruiter product. She is also responsible for founding LinkedIn's Women in Tech, WIT initiative that is focused on empowering women in technical roles within the company. And Erica is a graduate from San Jose State University and was also a member of SCE. This fireside chat will be moderated by our lovely Seema Vora. We have a short moderated Q&A session open towards the audience towards the end. Feel free to throw some questions into the chat and we will try to get to them at the end. Please welcome them both.
So first of all, thank you so much, Erica, for having us today. We really appreciate you for coming in.
Of course, anything for my fellow Spartans, so you name it.
So before we get started, I know we gave a little bit of an introduction, but it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. Let's see, I graduated with a computer engineering degree from San Jose State over 20 years ago. So quite a while ago. Let's see, I'm in a prime of my career right now. I'm really excited, to be honest. I'm now running 3 lines of businesses at LinkedIn and just enjoying the path of my career. Some people are like, oh, you're VP, you're already there. It's like, no, I'm continuing to grab on and learn more and grow. And so I'm super excited to be here. I'm a big fan of women in tech and that initiative. So anything that I can help to support the community and pay it forward, that's why I do these things. A little bit about myself on the personal side. Let's see, I have 2 dogs, 2 kids, 5 chickens, and 2 lizards. The lizards my son takes care of, but I got a family farm over here and doing well. So I'm excited to be here and see how the conversation goes and any questions you have.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. You have a wide variety of animals.
As I do.
So going back to the fact that you are an SJSU alumni and used to be a member of SCE, which is, for the people joining in late, we are the people that have, organized this conference. You serve as a role model to many of us on campus. So can you describe your journey to becoming a VP at LinkedIn and things you've learned along the way?
It's a long, it's been a long journey, and I probably have a really long answer to that. Depends how much you want me to talk here. But, my journey to VP, I didn't become a VP until maybe 2 years ago or so, but it wasn't this path that like, I want to be a VP, right? I started off graduating from college. I was the first gen of my family, and I just wanted to get a career in engineering. That was my goal. My goal was very much like, go to school, get a degree, and get a job in my field. It was as simple as that. And when I think about we can go into other detailed questions, but when I think about my career when it first started, I was very unintentional about of where I wanted to go. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. I wanted to be great at my craft. And so I was just hungry for anything that came my way. And I just said yes. So I got myself into situations that I loved. And there was also things that I realized I didn't love, realizing what type of engineer that I want to be. And then later, I would say probably my later career, I became more intentional about, hey, I want to grow. I want to be a leader. I want to learn how to run a business. I want to take on more. So my journey has been a lot of learnings along the way. It's not this perfect path up and to the right. It's a little jagged. It's a little up. It's a little down. But just becoming more intentional about what I want to do and what strengths I bring to the table and how I can contribute at the end of the day. And you start to learn who you really are and what skills you're really great at in contributing to the larger mission of a company or a team. So it continues to be a journey, but we could talk about some examples.
Yeah, so I think taking it back along with some of the things you mentioned, what advice would you give to your college self if you take yourself back to your college days?
Yeah. So if I take myself back to my college self, there's very, pivotal moments that I remember where when I love the chat. Someone was asking certain classes I took back in the day, and that's absolutely correct. And so I will talk about those experiences. I remember, taking some of the classes and them being just really hard and getting my first F on an exam. And it feels horrible. I studied really hard. I thought I had it. And then when you get the exam and you're like, wow, what happened? Right. And I remember in that moment just feeling complete failure, right? And I remember this friend, good friend of mine now, but at the time, this guy Aaron reached out to me and he said, "Hey, do you need some help?" And I wasn't into any groups. I was working at the same time, so to me, it was just like go to school, go back, go and do my job. And I just looked at him like, "You are my savior," and I said yes. And that was when I was introduced to SCE. And so without that community or that group, I would never have passed any of my classes. I was in that room until 1, 2 in the morning, whiteboarding solutions. And let me tell you, after that, I passed all my courses. I don't look up my GPA. I wasn't like the smartest student, but I made it happen. And those friends, we are friends to this day. We've helped each other get jobs. We know how hard we've worked. And I have a group chat that we talk all the time, every day. And we just kind of vent and we talk about the real world and families, and we get together, and we got together right before the pandemic, luckily. So we're trying to figure out when we're going to meet next. But those relationships that you're building now are so important. So when I think about back in my college days, I was lucky that someone asked me if I needed help, but I wish I would have been more intentional and be like, somebody help me. So I think, realize when your peers need help, lend a hand, because sometimes people don't know how to ask, and we all need to be there for each other to make it happen. So you never do anything alone. Trust me, not even when you get your job, there's never like, oh, you're by yourself. No, I have a team of people that make things happen. So it's never solo. So start acting now in that way.
Yeah, I think going back to, I think you mentioned about like asking help. I think one of the biggest stress factors that a lot of us engineering students face is, finding a job, finding an internship, and taking it back to a time when you first, maybe as a recruiter perspective, when you first started a role as a senior manager, and you were part of a hiring committee. What advice would you give to students who, and what did you do? What did you learn from that experience as a hiring manager?
Yeah, you're hitting on a particular story that, I think, it was hard for me at the time, coming in. We all are different in some way, whether it's from the school we went to how we show up, how we look, what backgrounds, what our gender is. I mean, we're all unique individuals. And sometimes you feel you get in your head where you feel maybe you're a bit judged, or people are judging who you are. Maybe you're not where people want you to be. And I think about this particular moment in my career when I was a senior manager and I was in a hiring committee where I'm hiring talent. Now I got my job and I got into management. Now I get to choose who we hire and how we calibrate and pick individuals to join the company. And I remember being in that room, newer to the company, and they started looking at profiles, and you'd start doing this. This is several years ago. It's very different now, and that's why I'm glad we're in a better state. But you'd have this checklist of what school did you go to, this pedigree, what GPA do you have, your experience, just check. Which a lot of that still happens today. But in that moment, I remember looking at, well, they had a lot of check boxes that I didn't fit. And I'm here at this company and we're saying like, no, they need to have these things. I had a non-traditional background, 7 years to graduate. I went to a state school, which is like amazing. And I feel so proud about, and didn't have internships when I started off. I was working full time. And I remember in those meetings, they were like, hey, San Jose State, this state school, no, let's put them aside. And I just remember being quiet in that moment and not knowing how I'm going to react. And it happened a couple of times. And at the end, I was just, no, I have to say something. This is not okay. I know I'm at the table for a reason, and people are looking at talent, I think, in a closed-minded way. So I decided to say something, and I said, hey, I went to San Jose State. This is my path. And, they looked at me feeling a little awkward, and honestly, probably, I think, a little foolish in that moment. I was kind of like, oh, great. But it also I put myself out there. And I think about some of the changes that happened after that. I had a recruiter that reached out to me. She said, hey, your story really inspired me. I want to think about how we're recruiting differently. And she said, we created these like blank profiles with no faces. And so they're blind, you don't see what they look like. And she said, we put them up and we say, who would you hire? And she said, we would say no to this person, yes to this person. Then they reveal the profiles. Like, oh, one of them is your profile, Erica, that we showed. They said no to. I'm like, oh, great. But it just, the bias that is created, we all have it. And so you sometimes need to call it out. It makes people think differently. But I'm proud to say, I think I got some stats just recently the other day. We have over 100 students from San Jose State working at LinkedIn. We have VPs like myself. I had another VP, Kevin, senior directors. So it just tells you how we've transformed how we think about hiring. And I just hope that more and more companies do that, and that we're more skill-based hiring. It's about the skills that you have. It's not necessarily all these other things, these check boxes that need to happen. So that's why I'm also excited to lead our talent solutions and how we recruit talent on LinkedIn. So talk about it in a massive, scalable way. I get to build that product to make people think differently.
Yeah, I think tying it back, this is like a perfect example of like a strong thing that you added into LinkedIn to foster an inclusive environment. So how do you define and create a fostering engineering culture as a leader? Because it can get really stressful.
Yeah, I think about creating the culture that you want, right? Think about who you want to work with, who you want to be your manager, create that environment that you want. You have to be part of it. Like, it is important top down, like how I act, how I show up in a meeting, how I give opportunity, how I create a team. I do a lot, and that's, at my level, but everybody needs to do it at every single level of the organization, or else you're not going to be able to cultivate that culture. So it's important to talk about it. It's important to act on it. So think about even simple things. And it still happens today, even at, when I'm in a senior leadership meeting, where you have a meeting, you're in this Zoom call, right? You see everybody, and you see that someone's just taking over the conversation, right? This happened to me, honestly, yesterday with a very senior person, right? And I'm like, I haven't heard from that person. I really want to hear from that person, because they know exactly how this was being built. And it was a moment like, how do you act in that moment? Do you let them continue? Do you interrupt? And so I use, I navigated it where I'm going to ask a question that will be towards that person, where it'll be like, hey, Sarah, or hey, Paul, I'd love for you to answer this or discuss more about this problem on the technology side of how we built the platform. I just brought them into the conversation. I know that they wanted to talk. They didn't know how to interject. And so I just gave them a platform to be able to elevate their voice, because guess what? When I called their name, you're going to speak, right? If I call Seema, I'll be like, what do you think? Now I put you in a situation, you're going to have to talk, right? But not in a blindsided way, but more of like a prepared way. And it worked. So I think being aware of the dynamics of a conversation, and then acting how you can bring that conversation in so it's inclusive. And then sometimes I do simple things around the room, around the Zoom, we say now, around the Zoom, let's hear from everybody, right? So I think you need to think about that and have awareness, because the odds are, if you're seeing it and feeling it, the odds are 5 or 10 other people are seeing the same thing. So, and then they also appreciate that you took action. And then guess what? You're a leader in that moment too. So good for you.
Yeah, I think keeping that mindset is really important. And in addition to that, I think we mentioned this in your bio, you served as a voice for many women in your company. And what was your inspiration and drive that actually motivated you to start the Women in Tech program at LinkedIn?
It wasn't like, oh, I want to start this. It wasn't, and also back in my day, we didn't talk about mentors and sponsorships, and there was some Society of Women Engineer programs, but there wasn't a lot that I fell into. I didn't start it. I just started doing it, right? So it was more about how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel in this company? Who do I want to work with? What kind of environment do I want to be part of? And when you start being the only person, whether it's gender or whatever, difference that you feel that you have, it can be pretty lonely, and it can be where you don't have a sense of belonging, and it's not great. It doesn't feel great. So I wanted to create a different environment. So I was like, hey, I'm going to reach out to the very other few women in the organization at the time and talk to them. So we started talking, and then you start realizing, wow, they feel the same way. And then you start talking to even male allies, and they're like, well, I didn't know you felt this way. And so all of a sudden you just open up. The first stage was awareness of like, wow, we didn't even know this was like a thing. And I didn't even know it was a thing. I worked in my career, never thought about it, but there was a certain point that I was like, it could be better. And when you know that it could be better, you want to do something about it. So I started doing things just organically. And then our head of engineering had reached out to me, and he said, hey, would you lead this? And I said, well, gosh, of course I'd love to, but I also, run an engineering team. This is not going to be a pro bono thing. Like, it has to be a program just like anything else I do. So I want full-time people to help me. I need some money. I need all these other things. It's to be part of my job, 20%. And, because if I'm just going to make it a volunteer effort, I feel like it's not going to get done. Just like anything else, I want to be successful. So that's the way that it came about. And then it's very measurable. And then I create a team around it, just like any other project or team I lead. And that's how it's evolved over the last 7 years. And now we have branch, it's almost like a government. We have like the WIT lead, and then we have the branch lead and the co-lead and every part of the organization. So it's just, we're at massive scale right now, which is super exciting. And that's how you penetrate into the organization at all levels of the organization. So it's been a great journey to be part of, and they all feel, empowered, and you have this sense of community. But the male allies have been huge to be part of that, because they also, you think about it, at the end of the day, it's about opportunity, and it's about creating inclusive environments. And if you're in an environment where you're, the minority, you need those allies to be the ones that actually are doing the work. It's not about fixing that minority group. It's actually about fixing the other individuals that take up the majority and help them, lead and create awareness.
And I think the way I met you was through a Women in Tech event at LinkedIn. And I can say, like, from personal experience, I was definitely inspired and motivated, and it actually solved the issue that we're going to talk about in our next question, which is imposter syndrome. So many students face like an imposter student. In fact, all of my peers who I've talked to feel this way at one point in their schooling, where they often believe that, they're not cut out for the industry, they don't fit in. So what advice would you give to these students who fail to believe in their potential to succeed?
Look, the imposter syndrome is real. And I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, but it does not end. So whenever you are in a new environment or new role, it's that voice gets in your head, that it starts to happen. That war zone exists where you start telling, you're actually the worst person to yourself. You never tell a friend that, but you definitely tell yourself all these horrible thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I even think about myself jumping into a new team that was led by somebody else, and now I'm leading it. Do you think I have imposter syndrome? Of course. Like, I have to now meet a whole bunch of new people, maybe change a little bit of a direction and reorg. So it happens all the time, every single level. Every executive I know, they also have it. Even my boss, who's like head of engineering, he's like, I had imposter syndrome going into this role. So it does not exist. So when you know that it's happening, my biggest advice to you is to kind of label it like it's happening, right? And this is like probably way more of an extreme of the reality. So, like, hey, let's put a reality check on this. And then the next thing that I have always done is I simply talk to people, and I have a couple allies, that I reach out to, and I say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Because when you get in your head and you do that, you can sometimes have outcomes or decisions that you did in the moment that maybe because you were scared, or that imposter moment of feeling or failure, like sometimes you just got to wait it out and you got to talk it out and you got to figure out, okay, let me figure out how I can navigate it rather than shy away, figure out how you can navigate it and get some help from your peers to figure out how you can navigate. The best thing to do is, talk about the example, say, hey, this is the actual challenge. And this is how I'm going to make sure that I can either convince myself that this is the right role for me, and this is the right area for me or not. But I think it's so soon to make that decision, because I think about when I first graduated from college, I started off as a front-end developer, which is a whole nother conversation. But I was not great at it. I did not like it. And, it was like, am I cut out for this? But you know what, engineering, there's so many different fields that you can be in. Just because you chose that major, it actually gives you a platform of so many choices to have. And so whether you go the leadership route, the product route, some of the best product folks that I work with are engineering majors, some of the best leaders, and then some of the best individual contributors at the company that actually sit down and write code and scale our systems. It's remarkable. It's amazing. So I think to say that you're not cut out for it, you're just starting. So you have so much to explore. Yeah.
So I think tying that back, I think a reason why many students at least face that imposter syndrome is because they feel like they won't be able to contribute to a team. If they're like in the future, whether it's for a project or if it's for a team. So what implicit factors do you think contribute to individual success or even team success?
So look, the world is constantly evolving. We're all going to not know what we need to know. That's just a fact. I think about the, different milestones of my career when, I remember, oh gosh, what year was it? Maybe whenever the iPhone and Android came out, right? So we had to figure out how to do mobile development. Do you think anybody was really great at it and knew? We had to train up everybody to figure that out and have to build so fast. And that was like the mobile era where and it was also humbling. We all had to admit we didn't know what we needed to do. We all needed to take classes and bring trainers in, and it would be bumpy along the way. But I find more and more that whether it's something like a new technology comes about, it could just be a new project, a new space that you don't know anything about. You have to start learning that space. So I'm living through it right now. I'm actually going through it right now. I took on this new job to expand my roles around LinkedIn talent solutions, our recruiter product. You would think I've been at LinkedIn for almost 11 years. Don't you know everything? And also you've been in the industry for 20 years. Don't you know everything? It's like, no, I don't know. I don't use this product that much. I need to know how it works. I need to understand the technology. I didn't build it. I need to understand our roadmap. I want to understand how we make it better. And so I'm just doing back-to-back deep dives with all the folks on the team that know this, and I'm learning from them. So it's just a reality. And so now I'm like, and it's interesting in these moments, they think, oh, Erica, you're running the team VP, we got to prep. And I'm like, no, you got to realize I'm coming into this meeting. I know absolutely nothing. You're here to educate me and make me smart. So don't worry about prepping. I'm going to ask a whole bunch of lame questions that you're going to probably laugh at me at because I just don't know the basics here. And so it's been taking the pressure off where it now becomes a conversation, and you cultivate that culture of learning where people are like, it's okay. It's okay that you don't know stuff. And it's like, look, Erica doesn't even know a lot of stuff. We got to ask the questions and create that environment to do that. Now, you want to be able to fish for yourself and start researching and ask questions, but you need to be able to start in some way. So it's very natural. You're not going to know everything. And, if anything, I feel more comfortable when I have people around me that are not acting like the know-it-alls. I personally rather have an authentic person on my team, and we're figuring it out together. It makes it more fun, and it makes it more real.
I think that sounds like a really good way of, just jumping in. You may not know everything. And going back, you mentioned like a project that you recently started in, but in general, in your 11 years at LinkedIn, what's your personal favorite project that you're most proud of, or you thought was most impactful that you worked on?
Oh, there's so many things. Most impactful, I would say, would probably be, I'm trying to think how many years ago. it was maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, but, or longer, when I was leading the growth team, and we made a commitment to our CEO and the company that we would hit X million number of members. And we were like not on the right trajectory to do that. And my team was like so small and couldn't do it alone. And just saying, I know it's important, I know it's our team, but sometimes there's the macroeconomics that impact like how you can grow. There's so many factors, but like, what do we need to build? What's stopping us for growing? Understanding our friction and our registration flows, or people drop off, just really measuring like what's stopping us for growing, or some of those bottlenecks, and just admitting like it's I can't do it alone. What we did is we rallied everybody in the company to make it part of their problem. Stop what you're doing. Everybody's working on this because this is what we need to do for the business. And while it was hard, we had to stop doing other things and move forward, it was one of the best moments that I remember in my career, because when you're going all in together and trying to solve a problem together, it feels fabulous. And we still have many pictures and celebrations from when we hit the milestone, because of course we did, and it just felt so great. So moments like that, I have a lot of them at LinkedIn and throughout my career, where it was always those moments where it was a team.
Wow, I think that was a lot of the questions we had prepared for you for our fireside. So now I'd like to open it up to our audience. I know Nanar has gotten some PM messages. Nanar, would you like to ask some of the questions from the chat?
Hi, 1 second. Let me have them all listed out. All right, I just wanted to say thank you, Erica, so much. I really liked when you talked about how you kind of diminished that stigma around state schools in San Jose State, because I know, at least going in, that I came in with that stigma a little bit. And once I kind of broke out of that, it was a lot easier to take on like learning opportunities. So it's really interesting how you guys kind of transformed that hiring process, and it was really inspirational to hear about. We have a couple questions from the chat. The first one is from Kalyan. He's asking, when you join a new company, do you prefer to have the company fit your ideals, or do you want to hop into the company and work with their culture?
I would say the latter. I think for you to try and you can't, I've been part of companies where I've changed the culture. It's just harder to do that, but you can take it as a challenge. But I would say if you're starting off, culture is so important to me. And I want to work with a team of individuals that I feel that I could relate to and believe in their culture and their values. So to me, I'd start off doing that. Now, if you want to go in and you realize the culture is not what you want, but if you have the power and the autonomy to change that, I think that's amazing. And I've done that in my career to some teams, even within a company. You have to realize a company is a company, but at the end of the day, there's individuals, right? And there's individual teams. Even a team within a company can have a very different culture. So I've done that within teams within the company. But you're right, the basics of the company, they should have a mission and vision statement that is true to you. But then at the end of the day, down to the team size, team level, you're going to deal with those challenges. So, but I definitely start at the top. I mean, there's just some companies I wouldn't work for just because those are my beliefs, my values. You stick to your values of what are important to you, and they are not the same for everybody. And that's what makes us so unique and different. But I would say stick to your values, because at the end of the day, that's going to help you keep you there, and also help you grow there as well. Because if you're always in that, constant debate of like, the culture is not great, the values don't line up to me, that's not in a really great place to be. And I don't think healthy environment to thrive.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's kind of a balance between give and take in that sense. We have another question from Sam. He's asking, what are your ways to promote motivation or discipline among your team? And how do you kind of spread that to others as well?
Yeah, so I think, Sam, this is a good one. As a leader, I don't tell people what to do. I influence them what to do. So it's really important say I need to work on, I'll give you an example of making LinkedIn Learning more engaging, where we want to have it be more of a social platform. And so people are learning together. I have to be able to sell that story on the why. So when people understand, because anyone that's building, you want to just be like, oh, there's your 5 tickets, there's your tasks, go build. Like, I want to know how it lines up to the bigger picture. I want to know how it lines up to the mission, even to the company. So if you can tell that story, we have to be great storytellers at the end of the day. And you have to also, in my position, repeat your stories over and over again until you get sick of hearing yourself. Because the odds when someone hears it, they might have not heard it on the first time, second, they'll hear it maybe on the third time. And then you have to cascade that message out quite a bit. So I have to repeat my stories quite a bit on the why. But once someone knows the why that we're trying to do this, like, hey, you know, learning can be lonely for some folks. People want to engage with others and learn together. It doesn't work for everybody, but this is what they want to do. And right now, when COVID hit, I'll give you a perfect example, is all of a sudden, all of us had to get on Zoom. Do you think everybody knew how to use all this technology of how to use Zoom or how to use Teams or Google Hangouts or, you know, you have Blue Jeans? I mean, I can list all the technologies of video conference tools out there. We knew that it was a moment to learn and people needed to learn from each other. So what we did in that moment is we said, hey, we got to rise up right now. We talked to everybody. We say, hey, we're going to find these LinkedIn courses, LinkedIn learning courses that talk about this technology. We're going to put it on the platform. And guess what? We're also going to do something different, which we're going to make it free. And then we need a marketing campaign to go out there. And then we have to remove all our paid models that are around it so we can just give it to everyone. And it was the biggest gift that everybody had. And we were able to do it in the fastest. I think our turnaround time was, I don't know, a couple of weeks. It was crazy. It was so fast because people knew the why. And they're like, I get it. I want to be part of that. I want to say I did that. I want to know that I helped people. And then you'd be surprised how fast people move. So.
Yeah, I really agree. People are very much motivated when they know they're making an impact. Anna asks, how would you assess if a team will be a good fit for you when you interview for a position?
Oh, it's a good question. So, you know, it is really hard because until you start having experiences with people, then you really, really know. But in the meantime, the best thing that you can do is you want to interview every single team member that you're going to be working with on the team, and also the disciplines around you. So say you're going to be joining as an individual contributor on the team, then I want to meet maybe, you know, do different levels of the organization. Like I'd say, hey, who are some of your most senior ICs, engineers on the team? I want to interview with them. And also your junior folks. How people treat all different levels of the organization also gives you a pretty good signal of how they're feeling and what and how they're progressing at the company. And then also I would work with partners. So yes, part of my team, but like, you know, as an engineering team, you're working with, depending on how the company's laid out, but you got product folks you're working with, you got marketing folks that you're working with, you have data science, you have AI engineers, you have all these different disciplines in order to make up that Uber team for what the company is trying to drive. So I would meet with those different functions. Then you get a sense, okay, how's the local team? How's the extended team? And then you get to assess, because you'd be surprised. I mean, people and make sure they're one-on-one, right? Because you'd be surprised what people tell you and people share. And just if you ask a simple question of, how are you doing? How long have you been at the company? What keeps you at the company? What are you most excited about the company? What are you looking for as a new team member coming onto the team? You know, what problems are you trying to solve? You'd be surprised. Like sometimes they're hiring people because they're trying to fix a problem. Well, what was that problem? Right. And so you'd be able to get a lot out of someone if you're talking to the right people and ask the right questions. So that would be my advice.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's particularly insightful for a lot of college students, especially because we're applying to internships and jobs and such. Anna actually has a question piggybacking on an answer that you had before. Do you have any tips on how to be a better storyteller?
You know, being a storyteller is, you know, it takes practice. One thing that I do notice, I can tell you where you can get it wrong, is where you keep on talking. You don't really get to the point. Yeah, I'm sure many of you have talked to people and you're like, wow, it's just a lot of rambling. You know, think about the message, maybe the 1, 2, or 3 points that you want someone to take away. Because sometimes what happens is when you're a storyteller or when you're presenting, sometimes people hide behind their slides. If there's a lot of slides, they have these slides and they're clicking through and you're like, what's the so what? What, you know, what do you, we even will start a meeting. All our meetings at LinkedIn really is this meeting will be a success if you walk away with 1, 2, and 3. If you don't, you know, because like meetings are expensive. Also, you have a whole bunch of people in a room. So a storyteller is like making sure what things that you want people to take away. And when you know that you want them to take away those 1 to 3 points, you build a story around that as an example, right? So the more that you can think about a personal example of, well, I'm trying to talk about this one thing, think about a story that would help that one thing come to life, that people will walk away and say, I remember what they said. I don't, you know, having this conversation, I try and put in those nuggets of, well, this is what happened to me. This is what happened with, you know, the resumes. That was the story, right? So what are you walking away with? You're walking away with, hey, we need to think about hiring different. Actually, I that imposter syndrome that I have in my head, that's not true. People are thinking differently. It is possible. So think about the message that you want and then add the story to it. One thing I'll tell you that people tend to do that I didn't learn until earlier in my career is they're like, oh, you have to present. What do people start doing right away? Get the slides open and they say, oh, I got to put all this stuff. Put the slides away, get a sheet of paper, talk about the message, what points you want, then you add the slides. And usually you should not have any slides. You should not be able to need to talk to any of your slides. So again, think about the message. Reverse engineer the story. Yes, Anna.
I know that was really good advice. I know that I have a history of rambling a lot, so thank you so much. We have a question from Hayden. He's asking, how often and how quickly do you have to acquire new skills for work, like a new programming language or developing a new platform and such?
It happens. It depends on you know, the company and what transition they're going through. It will happen often because with technology, you're always needing to get onto the next version of something, even if it's the same version of the language, right? What's the new version that you have to get onto? And so we always want to stay with the latest and greatest, because if we're stagnant, if we're not staying up with the latest, greatest, things start breaking down, right? So you always need to do that. But then if we make movements to like change from this front end language to another one, it doesn't happen, I would say probably at LinkedIn, maybe it's happened maybe 4 times or so. So it doesn't, you know, because that's a big shift, right? Think about the rewrite and all the work that you have to do. That's massive. It's massively a massive undertaking, and ensuring everybody's trained up to do it. So when you make big movements like that, it doesn't happen all the time, but there's moments where we needed to have RESTly endpoints for all our APIs. We didn't have that at LinkedIn. And it's like, to make every single system that we have to do that, I mean, we had to pause so much work for the team to be able to do that. So I think there's moments where the company decides to make a big change and everybody has to be all in, or it doesn't work, or you just decide on an individual technology for an individual team. But we try and standardize so you don't have too much flux and change, because we need to move as fast as we can. So if you're constantly creating too much change, that's also not successful. So you have to be very, it has to be a really wise decision on the why you're changing. But in general, things change all the time. Like I was saying, like mobile development, AI, you know, it's like all this stuff is happening. You have to have a sense of always be learning mentality, because the world is evolving. You have to be always be learning. And yes, there's great online learning resources. I love it.
Thank you so much, Erica. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that. I have my own personal question. I know you say to always have that kind of learning mentality. So how do you suggest going about finding a mentor? Or like, what qualities do you seek in a mentor to kind of continue your learning?
Yes. So I don't look at mentors as one. I look at them as mentor moments. So I have like a board of mentors. I think about all the things that maybe there's a particular problem that I'm working on. I look around and like, who would be best to help me in that moment? I reach out to them and say, hey, can I grab, coffee or a Zoom chat with you for 15, 30 minutes? And I'd love your advice. And so it's not about finding that mentor. It's about asking for help from a particular person for that particular moment. So I rather talk about mentor moments, because asking someone, I've had so many people ask me to be their mentor, and it's like, it's a big load. I'm like, I don't have, that it's like asking me for a relationship that I don't even know each other, like this takes time. Let me think. So I always say, I actually don't do that. I do mentor moments. I'd love to meet with you if you want to have a chat about something. And then if the relationship evolves where we tend to talk more because we're working through something and they need my help, then it happens organically. And so I would encourage people to have many mentors, board of mentors, many mentors. I have in my life. There's not one person that I go to for things. I go to different mentors for different things. So I would say do a simple thing of making sure you have a problem you're working on, so you could be explicit, because the worst thing is that someone will ask for my time and they're not prepared, or they don't have something they're working on. It's like, you kind of wasted your time and our time, right? So have something tangible you're working on, and say, hey, I'd love to get your advice on X. And that's where you start. That's a starter for me. And then take it from there. But don't make it this, bigger than it is type of thing.
Thank you so much for your advice. I know on behalf of myself and the audience, we really appreciate you answering our questions. Unfortunately, I do think that's the time we have today for questions. So back to you, Seema.
Yeah, once again, thank you so much, Erica. I think understanding what it takes to be successful, not only from a well-accomplished person like you, but also somebody coming from a background that many of us on this call can relate to, is both motivational and inspiring. So thank you once again for joining us today. We know how busy you are.
Well, thank you for the time. And it was great being with all of you. And I hope it helped. So
it really did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we will have a quick stretch break before our next speaker, Professor Sanjoy Paul.